I think sometimes subqueries can catch a lot of flack for being really complicated, which is kind of fair in a way because I think they can take a little bit of a reframe of how you normally go about constructing a query. But I think the important thing to remember when doing these is that if you understand your basic selects, wheres, some operators, aggregation functions, max, min, sum, count, stuff like this, there really aren't any other new commands or syntax you have to learn. We're just going to use our existing syntax to write queries in a slightly different way. So what is a subquery? All a subquery at the end of the day really is that we're basically going to use the results of one query inside of another query. So our query is going to contain what we call subqueries. It contains other queries within it to get back more information. I think the best way to think through these is with an example. So here we've got a product table, and it's got all of our different products for this online store. We have our product ID, we have the product name, we have the supplier ID, whoever supplied it, we have the category ID, whatever category it is in, we have the units, and we have the price of our products. So now let's say what we want to do is we want to get the information of the highest priced item in our table. So whatever the highest priced item is, I don't know what it is specifically, but whatever that item is, we want to know which one has the highest price. And then we want to get back only the record, all of the information. So the ID, the name, the supplier ID, the category, the unit, and the price of whatever thing has the highest price. And actually, if you have some familiarity with SQL, I expect you're already able to write a function that would do this. There's a couple of ways to approach this. I want you to just take a second and pause the video and come up with whatever your current way is, even if it takes multiple queries, that's fine, of selecting the information about our highest priced product. So the product, the highest price, we want all the information back about it, all the ID, name, supplier ID, category ID, unit, and price. Pause the video for a minute and think through how you would do that. So there's potentially a few ways we could go about this. The first thing I need is I need to know what thing has the highest price. So if I want to know what the highest price in our database is, I need to know what the highest price is so I can filter for the thing that has the highest price. I could do this a few ways. One way is that I could look through my data manually, right, and try to find something with the highest price. There's a few big ones in here that it might be. A better way, right, would be to write a query since this might be a lot of data. So there's two different queries that come to mind that I could write. One is I could select the maximum price from the products table from products. And if I run this query, what you'll see is we get back 256. So that's the highest price of anything in our table. The other way I could run this, potentially, is I could do select. We just want the price from products. And then we could order by the price descending. So if I do this, I should get back the prices in descending order, and we only want the top one, so I could say limit one. You could also do this. Probably the first way is the more concise way, but both of these would work in getting back the highest priced item. Now, I know the highest priced is 264. So now I could write a query like a select star from products, and then I could say where the price is equal to 264, right? I could run this query now, and now I have the information back for the highest priced item in our database. And if you understand what I just did in these queries, you're going to be able to understand subquerying because subquerying is really just combining these different queries in sort of a new way. So now in a subquery, the trick we're going to pull is that we're not going to write these two queries separately. Here, let's just look at these two for a minute to simplify our lives here. We're not going to write these two queries separately in a subquery. We're going to sort of write them together. We're going to write these as one single query. So we will get the maximum price, and we will also select that whatever that maximum price is, we'll do that all in a single query instead of hard coding in this value of 264 specifically. And I want you to pause just for 1 second and think about why do we want to do that? Why is that a useful thing that we might want to do instead of our current approach here? So there's a few possible reasons for this. One is that we don't want a manual step to happen in our queries. Right now, when we run this, if I run select max price from products, I get the maximum price, but then I have to go manually basically take that maximum price and stick it into my query, which I don't really want to do that manual step. I probably want the computer to just figure it all out. The second reason is that what would happen if I write this query? Okay, this query works great, right? I run this query and it works perfectly. I get back the product that I want, the highest priced one. But then what happens if somebody goes and they insert a new highest priced product into the table? Now, if I'm still running that same query, if I gave someone in business or something this query and they run it, what they're getting back now is no longer the most expensive product. It's just the product that we hard coded to have this particular value. So in this case, we have to go back in here and manually find this again and change the query amount. It'd be great if this would just always, if we could write a query that just always gave us whatever the highest priced product's information was. We want this query to be robust. We want to keep working even when our data might happen to change. That's what our goal is. Now that I've set that all up, let's go ahead and actually write our subquery. So the reality is we already have the components we need in order to do this query. We are already finding the maximum price. That's the first step we need. And then in order to know what it is that we are filtering for, what this is, we need to basically take the value we're getting back here, this 300, whatever maximum price we're getting here, and we need to use that in our where. And the kind of cool thing about this is it basically doesn't require any new syntax here. I can just take this query, and instead of putting 300, I can put a parentheses here, and I can stick in my other query, my select max price from products. So this is going to resolve to, we're going to get back this 300. And so then it's going to be like we're saying select star from products where price is equal to, and then whatever this returns. So in this case, 300. And this will always select whatever the maximum price is from our products table. So if I run just this line here, we should see now I'm getting back the most expensive product. And now even if I go and remove this most expensive product, I say delete from products where we'll say product ID is equal to 200. Even if I remove this, even if this goes away, when I run my select statement here again, we're going to see that now it's still getting what is now the highest priced item, even though our data has changed. So this is why we do subqueries a lot of the time. It's going to be to make us a little bit more robust to our changing data that we might have in a database. You can see subqueries done like this, where everything happens in one line. These subqueries can also be a little bit long sometimes. You might be filtering or doing fancy things in the subquery. So sometimes you'll see them done like this. I tend to write in this way just to make it a little bit less confusing. Hopefully you see, if you're familiar with other programming languages, it feels like I'm making like a function call almost, like I'm passing in the value of the highest priced item here. And then I'm passing that into my query above. I'm like using it as a parameter almost. So I kind of like to think of it like that, and I'll put it separately so that I can visually see that this is a separate query I'm running. I find this to be useful. Incidentally, the one other thing I'll say is that we could have used our other query here too, right? This also gave us back, if we remember, this also gives us back the highest priced item. So any query, this is not specific to the maximum function or anything. It's just any query you put in here, you can get back the results from it and use that in your select. So as long as I'm getting back basically, one value here and it's the correct value, whatever query I write here, I can stick any query inside of this where condition. So if I run this now, we should see that we're getting the same result. We're also still getting the 264 for our price. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this with another example. We're going to find all the products that cost more than the average price of a product. So if we look at our data right now, always good to start by breaking down the question and thinking about your data before you jump into it. If we look at our data right now, we have our products and all their information, and our products all have prices. We could get what the average price is for our products, and then we could find all the products that cost more than that average price. So we might want to see that information of what are some of our more expensive products that we have. Before I write the query, pause the video for a second and think through how you would write the query. Take a shot at thinking about what the steps would be here and what it might look like. So first off, the reason we use a subquery for this is because the average price of our products might change. So as we add and remove and change products or update prices, the average price is going to change because the data about our price is changing. So we don't want to just find the average price once. We want to use whatever the current average price is in our query if we want to find the products that have more than the average price. So that's why we need or want to use a subquery in the first place. And then when you're writing these, I would always think about them in terms of what is the information I need? What are the pieces of information I need? So first off, I need the average price. Second, I need to get the product information where things are more than whatever that price is. For the first step of this, I might think of this as, okay, we're going to select the average price of our products. So from products, right? I know how to do that. I know how to get an average. So we'll start with the part of this that I know how to do, that I know I can get. And there's our average price for our products. And the next thing I want to do is I want to write a query where I'm getting back all the information about the products that have higher prices than the average. Assuming I'm writing a normal query and not even worrying about subqueries yet, I can say we're going to select star from products. And then we are going to do this where, if I can type, where the price is greater than whatever the average price is. This would be, in this case, it's like 28.9221. In practice, we don't know what this is. It might be something different. We would need to run this query to know whatever our average price happens to be right now. So where the price is equal to, or where the price is greater than something, those are the rows we want to get back. So now if we fill this in a little bit, what we could say is, all right, we know what that we want that to be. We don't know it, but the computer knows it. The computer can calculate whatever that average price is. So we stick our subquery that gets us this average price in here, and then we filter for products that have a price greater than that average price. So if I run this, what we should see is that none of the products we're getting back, these all cost more than that average price of 28 something, which is what I'm seeing here when I look through the results. And again, personally, I like to format them like this just to make it a little bit more clear where my subqueries are. It can be very overwhelming if you try to stick everything on one line. It can be very hard to read. So I try to break them out something like this. We just did some relatively simple examples here, but all subquerying more or less is going to work like this. It can get more complicated in the application of it, and you can have more complex subqueries or outer queries, you might call them, right? This is the inner query, this is the subquery, and then this is the outer query. You might hear it referred to that way sometimes as the inner and outer query. But none of the syntax inside of these queries is really different from any other SQL we might write. The important thing to remember is that when you're breaking these down, you want to do them in multiple steps. So you want to start by thinking through what are the pieces of information that I need in order to write this query. And then maybe I will almost always just start by writing those pieces as normal queries instead of jumping straight into the subquerying part. And then you're basically, the subquerying component is just mixing them together in the correct way. I would think of it as like building anything, right? Like you start with the pieces you need, and then you put all those pieces together. You don't jump straight to the final version. You start by getting the pieces, and then you assemble those pieces to make it easier on yourself to break it down into multiple smaller steps. The other thing we can do is subqueries can happen across tables, and they often do. In fact, it's one of the useful things we can do with them. Let's say we want to do something a little bit different now. Let's do an example with multiple tables. So let's say that we want to get the information of all customers who have never placed an order with us before. And honestly, this is the kind of query that you can look at if you're new to SQL and be like, I actually have no idea how to do that. All the customers who have never placed an order, I have no clue. But if we take a second and look through our data, I think we can probably find a way to do this that won't be too crazy. First off, let's look at the tables that we might want information for. So when I get a query like this, we want information for customers who have never placed orders with us. I see two things that stand out. It sounds like we have customers, and it sounds like we have orders. So we probably have tables that track these things. And in fact, we do, right? If we look over here, we have an orders table, and we also have a customers table. Now, I don't know for sure if those have what I want, so I will start by selecting from them. Customers, and let's also do orders from customers. Let's select star from orders. We can look at these two tables and see what we get back. So it looks like our orders have the ID of the order, the ID of the customer who made the order, our employee ID, our order date, and our shipper's ID. And if I look at the customer table, it looks like we have basically all of that customer information. So if we want all information for a customer, maybe their name, their address, their city, their country, it seems like we can get that from the customer table. And it seems like we can see which customers ordered things from the order table because we basically have an order ID tied to a customer ID. I want you to pause the video for a minute, and even if you're not sure, take a second and think through how might you get this information? What would you maybe think to do looking at these tables where we would be maybe able to get all of the information for our customers who have not yet placed an order? And I would always try to break these down into smaller steps first. So maybe start by thinking about how would I know if a customer hadn't placed an order, and then go from there. So for myself personally, I always want to start with what I can do. And what I can do, one thing I could definitely do is I could see every customer who has placed an order, right? If I look at this orders table and if a customer ID shows up in here, if a customer ID shows up at least one time in here, then it means they've placed an order. So what I could do is I could just say, instead of saying select star from orders like I have right now, maybe I just select the customer ID from orders. And if I look at this list that I get back, this list, customer ID, I keep reading my from statements today. I don't know why. If I look at this list I get back, I should get my different customers who have placed orders. And actually, when we look through this, you're going to notice that some customers are missing. What does it mean if a customer never shows up in the orders table? It probably means they haven't placed an order. So that's how I would say we could go about figuring out who has and hasn't placed orders with us, is if we don't find their customer ID in these list of orders, in this set of orders. If nowhere in orders do we ever have a customer ID tied to an order ID, then it probably means they haven't placed any orders. For example, I can see that we have, it looks like customer 1 never placed an order. We go straight to 2. And it looks like customer 6 didn't place an order. We went straight from 5 to 7. And there's probably other ones in here if I go through it. So we have a way that at least gets us everybody who has placed an order. And we'll call that good enough for the moment. We'll start there. Let's start thinking about what the other half of this query looks like. So again, I said two of the things that I noticed that our customer 1 and 6 hadn't placed orders yet. They were missing from this table. So let's imagine then that I want to write a query to get that information of those customers who haven't placed orders. Well, in that case, I might say select star from, and this time I want to do it from customer, because remember, I'm trying to get all of the customer information, the people who haven't placed orders. So select star from customers, and then we want to say where, because we're going to have some kind of condition. We're going to filter out anyone who has placed an order. And then the information I have, the information I'm getting back here that tells me if they placed it or not, is basically these customer IDs here that I'm getting back from this query. So I can say where the customer ID, where our customer table's customer ID is now, I don't want to say equals because there might be more than one. There's going to be a set of customer IDs. So if I say, if you remember our operators, if I say in, I can give it a list of IDs. So if I wanted to know, if I wanted to see the information for 1 and 6, for example, if I wanted to do this, I could list out my different customer IDs of 1 and 6. And if I ran this query, I'd be able to see the information for these two customers who haven't placed orders. Now, of course, I think there's probably more than just these first two. This is just from eyeballing it, what I saw. So we might want to do it a little bit differently than this, but this would be maybe our starting place for thinking about this. So now I could replace this. I could replace this with my subquery here. So let's make this a subquery. So let's say we're going to grab all the customers who have placed orders, and we're going to stick this in here. We're going to put it here. We're going to make this a subquery because remember, we want to get this list. We want to get whatever our list of customers are. We want to get it actively from our database, even as our customer information changes, even as customers place new orders. We want to make sure that this is up to date. So we want to be actively getting whatever our list of customers are who have placed orders every time. But if I run this right now, of course, what's going to happen, and here, let me do this on a separate line. If I run this right now, what do you actually, I'll pause for a second. What do you think is going to happen before I run this query? There's a little bit of an issue here. It's not quite going to do what I asked it to do. When I run this query, what you're going to see is that I basically get back all of the customer information for customers who have placed orders right now. So you'll see that where 1 and 6 are like not showing up here because we're only getting information. This select gets me back information where we have placed an order. This select customer ID from orders, this returns information for customers who have placed an order, right? It's getting back all of our customers who have placed at least one order. Sometimes they've placed multiple orders. So when we're looking at this query, it's not that we want everything in this list. It's that we want all the customers who are not in this list. Anytime where we have a record for a customer, so anytime where we have a record for a customer like customer 1 or customer 6 who don't show up, who aren't in the orders table, that's when we want to get their information because there's someone who hasn't placed an order. If their customer ID doesn't show up in our orders table, that customer hasn't placed an order. So we want to see where our customer ID is not in the list of customers who have placed orders. You can think of this, right, as this is customers who have placed orders. We want the customers who have not placed orders. If we run this now, what you'll see is that we get back the list of customers who haven't placed orders. So 1 and 6 show up here, and then we see some of the other ones who also don't appear in our orders table, who have never placed an order. There's not really anything more to subqueries. The subqueries can get more complex. So you could have we could have subqueries in multiple places in our query. We could have subqueries within subqueries. Maybe you need to do a subquery inside of one of your other subqueries, for instance. But none of the syntax really changes. It's just everything we've already talked about. Subqueries at the end of the day are just when we're going to get the results of one query, and we're going to use that in another query. So we write basically one big query that includes within it multiple subqueries that get back information we need. So in this case, we had to get information about which customer IDs had been associated with orders, which customers had placed orders. We need to get that information first in order to get the list of customer information for customers who had not placed orders. We needed to already know that so we could basically filter it correctly. And basically, when we're working with subqueries, that's what we're doing.